Tabac Blond is an incredibly elegant, sultry perfume. It reminds me of Marlene Dietrich or Carole Lombard, one of those alluring stars from the classic Hollywood age. In my last video, I asked you all to vote on which of the perfume samples from Surrender to Chance you would like me to review next. The perfume that got the most votes was Tabac Blond. Tabac Blond was released in 1919 by the House of Caron. This is one I've been excited to discuss. It's one that I've wanted to try for a few years, but always hesitated because I was afraid that it wouldn't work well with my skin chemistry, or that it would be too strong for me, or that, as the saying goes, it might wear me instead of me wearing it. But I decided to go ahead and order a sample anyway and give it a shot. Tabac Blond was released in 1919 and was intended for women who smoked. Smoking was still quite taboo for women in 1919, so Tabac Blond was intended to mask the smell of cigarettes. Now, some sources say contrary to that it meant to complement the smell. But I've read several different sources that state the opposite, that it was indeed meant to cover up the smoke smell. Tabac Blond is similar in many ways to Habanita by Molinard, which was released 2 years later. However, while Habanita does share some notes and is a tobacco-like perfume, Habanita is more of a soft, I don't mean delicate, but it's soft in sort of a plush way, if that makes sense. Soft, comforting, and does remind me more of tobacco, more of sort of like a pipe tobacco smell. Tabac Blond is drier than Habanita. It's not as sweet, and it doesn't have that same comforting feeling that Habanita has, at least for me. The featured notes in Tabac Blond are leather, carnation, musk, cedarwood, iris, vanilla, vetiver, patchouli, ylang-ylang, and linden flower. The way I would describe this fragrance is being leathery, smoky, with a sweet powder nuance and a hint of spice. This is a more dynamic, complex fragrance than I had initially expected. In many fragrances, a note will fade and the other notes in the fragrance will make their way into the spotlight. In Tabac Blond, there are notes that seem to fade only to resurface again later. When I first put this fragrance on, I smell a lightly smoky leather with a hint of carnation and musk. Then it slowly develops into something more powdery, with a slightly lipsticky iris and a hint of ylang and a little touch of vetiver. Then toward the dry down is when the more smoky notes come out. My guess is that the smoky notes in Tabac Blond are created by cedarwood and the vetiver. And then as more smoky notes rise up in the base notes, the carnation seems to resurface. There's a spiciness, and there's also something that's almost like a kind of food or like a candy, something edible. And that sort of wafts in and out, weaves throughout the fragrance very beautifully. I wonder if that could be the Caron base, the Caronade as some call it, which is a very specific combination of notes similar to the Guerlainade used in Guerlain perfumes. Some say that it's like a French candy, I can't recall the name, that smells of chestnuts. It's similar to what I've smelled in other Caron perfumes like Nuit de Noël, which I'm probably mispronouncing, but that fragrance also has a similar, lightly spiced sort of candy nuance that floats and drifts throughout the fragrance. Again, it is not sweet like Habanita, and it does have a certain sophistication about it. The sample that I purchased from Surrender to Chance was listed as an eau de parfum, and there is no indication of the age of the bottle that this sample was decanted from. So I am unsure if it's vintage or modern. They do have another perfume listed on their website that is a cologne version of Tabac Blond, so I'm not sure how that would compare. I am also not sure how the sample I received compares to the most current version that's available. From what I'm reading online on Base Notes and Fragrantica is that Tabac Blond has gone through a lot of changes and seems particularly in more recent years there's a few different formulations. So what I've read is some people believe that there's oak moss in the vintage versions but not in the modern, and I have no evidence of backing that up, so if any of you know, if any of you have smelled the vintage and might know that, that would be an interesting tidbit to know. Have you tried Tabac Blond? Which version have you tried, and do you know if there are extreme differences in the different formulations that are available? And do stay to the end of this video for another little poll on which perfume you'd like me to discuss next. Thanks for watching.